you guys are welcome to handle the deal with Mariel. So,
Got it.
it is now 2 days before the prophecy is fulfilled. Scytarnith, your eyes open, and I need to change the music.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Can I?
Special
Can I
beheading
play that?
music picked out.
No. Okay, one sec. I'm gonna have to copy paste it. It's not special, it's just a little darker than the regular music. Okay. Scytarnith, your eyes open. It's unusually humid out. A rainstorm sits off on the horizon. Fitting, I suppose. The rain is roughly an hour away, maybe more. The clouds are dark. It will be comforting when the rain finally arrives. In the center of town, the headsman begins to sharpen his blade. It's not often that an execution takes place in the Living Isles, but when it does, it's very much for serious offenses. This time is no exception. The grinding of the blade against the stone wheel is unsettling as it echoes through the city. The sun begins to hide behind the incoming storm clouds. The typical chirping of finches and quail are now turned into the sound of hawks and vultures. The city plaza, located directly outside of the Shrine of Tyrus, which is here, has been equipped to handle a situation such as this. Nobody enjoys an execution, let alone being a part of it. Scytarnith is awakened by Kai Gladamain. He wanders into the room where they have been keeping Scytarnith overnight, noticing the shackles around his arms and legs still, keeping him kind of locked into position here, far enough away. He nods to the guards, motioning for them to leave, placing a very extravagant breakfast on the ground before him at the feet of Scytarnith, then kind of backs away a bit and leans back against the wall, kind of plucking away at pieces of an apple with a paring knife. As he finishes the apple, he kind of reaches into his pouch, fiddling with a couple of things in his hand, trying not to interrupt Scytarnith's meal. As he's kind of sitting here in silence for a while, he would finally turn to Scytarnith. Scytarnith, you would notice that Kai stands up, walks a bit closer, and a black mist begins to set on around you. And he kneels down in front of you and says, "Well, I certainly didn't expect it to end like this. This may come as no surprise to you, or perhaps maybe it will, but I knew from the first time I met you that somehow things would go astray."
You didn't know me. Kai,
He looks at you and kind of grins and says, "When you boarded my stagecoach and made your way here, I knew who you were. It's my job to know. I escorted you safely through the gates of my city without so much as a second thought. It was not coincidence that you found aid in me."
why would you help the enemy?
"Because my mother, she organized the release of Bo Victus with the ESS. I don't know if you're fully aware, but my family is the reason the ESS exists today. When my great-grandfather came to this land looking to build a home, he took the knowledge and power within him to build the great and powerful Evans Spy Syndicate. Over time, they would go on to be vilified and eventually feared and then finally respected. Information is power, after all."
Why are you telling me this?
Kind of smiles and he says, because things went sideways. I started reaching out to the ESS in an attempt to help my family in any way possible, to bring rise to the Gladamain. I wanted to see our people thrive in a realm that was nothing like what we were. It was always Stormholm who was in the way. So I attempted to derail the king. At first, I couldn't get the help that I needed from the ESS. After all, I was just a 20-year-old boy in the eyes of these powerful individuals. But they eventually started to come around. I had them hire pirates from Crow's Nest Cove and change their banners to mimic the Victus naval flags. They sunk every ship from False Harbor to Ashenport. The people of Ashenport would starve while our family sat at banquet every night. Messages from Rainhaven would never reach their destination. Their people were isolated. And then Baron snapped. Kind of chuckles and says, my mother was naive, or perhaps maybe not. Her markings would prove that she is far more knowledgeable than she lets on. When Baron attacked the Empire, I was ecstatic. Finally, my ultimate goal would be seen through. I thought the king would be executed, the Empire would fall, and the Gladamain, leading the Alliance, would take over the realm. I believe your father was caught in the crossfire of that ordeal.
A lot of people were. Again, what? Why were you...
He interrupts you and stands up and starts walking around a bit and says, I knew not how deep my mother's relationship with my father was at the time. In fact, they weren't even together. At the time, the king was still with Queen Ananda and we were living on Rent Key. It was my mother's idea to attempt to stop Herodras. She would send her men and begin pushing back their militia. Her interference complicated things, so I took matters into my own hands. As I ushered Queen Ananda from the keep through the passageways, I dropped some poison into her one glass. She made it as far as the second gate before she collapsed. Everyone still assumes the Victus had something to do with it. He turns back and looks at you, his eyes kind of just dead on you, and says, when we finally left the keep, I regrouped with my mother. It wasn't time to... It wasn't quite time to finish everything off. My mother was trying too hard to rescue him. So I did what needed to be done. The same thing that I did to your mother. Enchantment. Once we freed him from his cell and he was released onto our ship.
At the words of my mother, I'm gonna look up, drop everything I have, just stand up as best I can with the chains and just glare at him.
He looks at you, doesn't flinch, slowly begins to raise his hand. And then when you don't charge forward, he just waits. And then he says, once we freed him from his cell and he was released from our ship, that could have been the end, but no, I couldn't have that. A quick word and a flick of the wrist, and he was no longer able to distinguish himself between friend or foe. I watched him slaughter the Paradris like animals and stopped him only seconds before he attempted to raise his sword against Saren. It's easy to take a life after all. I found entertainment in it, like I did whenever I turned the death plague onto the city of Nareen and when I killed your friend Kaisis in Calbridge Citadel. But this I couldn't have planned.
What do you mean you killed Kaisis? That was Tyrus.
He grins at you and says, attempting to kill a king in the open? With hundreds of people watching? Such a poor decision. The dagger your mother used. Any moment now, they will learn that Belvedere was responsible for taking that dagger from your chambers and bringing it to your mother.
What?
Doppelgangers are fun in that way.
No, they can't.
I couldn't let them keep that medallion around your neck as well. You just would have survived the beheading and then ended up back on your ship, and believe me, nobody wanted that either. And don't worry, I made sure that the ESS sent your belongings to your friend back in Bria. At least, I assume that's where they went.
Are you? Who are you?
He looks at you and kind of grins and says, "But you know who I am."
And the blood is gonna just rush from my face. And I'm gonna fall to my knees.
And as he turns away, he walks over towards this mist. And he says, "Don't worry. Nobody heard a thing that was going on in here. While you were busy chowing down on your last meal, I was creating a private sanctum for this space. Wouldn't want anybody to hear what I had to say now, would we? Besides, who are they going to believe? The assassin's son? Or the son of the king and the woman that she had just murdered?" And he slowly walks through the mist, giving you a bit of a smirk as he steps out. He walks up towards the door, turning the handle, kind of easing it back, peeking out and looking outside, and then motioning to somebody like normal, like everything is fine. He steps out and pulls the door to, and as he does, the mist dissipates. You find yourself once again in the room alone, with only moments left before your execution. And after those moments pass, the guards enter into your chamber. What do they see?
What? Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still in that position, just kneeling with my head down. I am not crying, but I haven't any real emotion on my face.
And with that, the guards walk in. You hear him say, "Stand up." And at first you don't move, and after a few seconds they reach down and grab you and lift you up, and you're able to get your feet underneath of you. They immediately lead you in shackles towards Upper Toledo, the rain now pouring across the city. Your footsteps growing heavier and heavier as you get towards that final ramp leading towards the platform ahead. They walk up to you in front of the stage, putting you in front of the chopping block and stand you there. Mariel stands in front of you and says, "Scytarnith Daile, you are guilty of treason to the Stormholm Empire, a crime that cannot go unpunished in our realm. Do you have any final words?"
My words have escaped me. Soon, I'm gonna look. So, can I see the sea from where I am?
Yes, you can.
Look
It's
out.
lifted up into like the side of the mountain. It's elevated pretty high.
I'm gonna look out to the sea and just straight to the ocean, just soon. And that's all.
And with that, the headsman kind of grabs on to your chains, pressing his foot into your knee and lowering you down into place. He raises the axe, kind of lifting it to the sky. The few citizens that followed watch in horror. Mariel stands unflinching, watching as the axe descends upon the block. And that is where we end our session.